I never thought I'd turn to online dating, but after my last relationship, my friends insisted. They told me it was the easiest way to get back out there. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just some lighthearted chats, maybe a coffee date. I created a profile, filled in some basic info, and waited. After a few awkward exchanges, I came across a profile that immediately stood out. Her name was Lucy. There was something mesmerizing about her pictures. Her eyes had this almost eerie glint, but her smile was warm and inviting. Her bio was minimal, looking for someone who's willing to see things others won't. That line felt strange, but I brushed it off as playful and sent her a message. To my surprise, Lucy responded within minutes. Her message brief but engaging. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, almost like we'd known each other for years. She told me she was just passing through my city for a while, here to resolve some unfinished business. I joked that it sounded dramatic, and she only replied with, "You'll see." We started chatting daily, and I became addicted to these conversations. She knew just the right things to say to keep me hooked. The only odd part was that every time I tried to suggest meeting up, she'd change the subject, evading my suggestions. Her excuse was always the same: not yet, soon. One evening, as I was scrolling through her messages, I realized something odd. Her photos, they were never clear. I hadn't noticed it initially, but her face was always slightly blurred, like there was a smudge on the camera lens. I brushed it off as a coincidence and sent her another message, asking to meet again. This time, she replied with something different. "I'm ready. Let's meet at my place." I stared at the message. She'd never mentioned where she was staying. When I asked for her address, she sent a location pin. The address was close by, in an older part of town filled with historic homes. That night, I found myself pacing, wondering if I should actually go. I had barely known this girl, after all, but something in her messages made it feel like I had to go. I convinced myself it was just first date jitters, threw on a jacket, and headed out. The house was darker than I expected. It was a massive, Victorian-style home that seemed abandoned, with chipped paint and vines snaking up the walls. I double-checked the address. This was it. My phone buzzed as a new message came in. "The door's open." Against every logical thought in my head, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was dead silent, the air thick with a strange, musty smell that felt like decay. I called out, "Lucy?" No answer. The light from my phone barely illuminated the hallway, but I saw a staircase leading up. Another buzz. Upstairs. Every instinct told me to leave, but I was curious and probably a little foolish. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking underfoot, and reached the second floor. Another message lit up my phone. Room at the end of the hall. I moved forward, feeling my heartbeat echo with each step. The door at the end of the hall was slightly ajar, just wide enough for me to see the faint outline of a figure standing by the window. "Lucy?" I whispered. She turned, and I swear my blood went cold. She looked like her profile photo, but older. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were hollow, dark pits. Her smile was gone, replaced by a twisted expression, as if she were in pain. She took a step toward me, her movements slow and jerky, like she hadn't walked in years. "I wanted to meet someone, like you," she whispered. Her voice was hollow, echoing in a way that made it feel like the words were bouncing off the walls around me. "Someone alive." I stumbled backward, my phone slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. I spun around, ready to bolt, but I heard her footsteps behind me. Faster than I thought possible, she was there, blocking my way. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. She raised her hand, and I felt this icy cold press against my chest, like she was reaching into me, into my very soul. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Her face drew closer, her eyes drilling into mine as she whispered, "I was waiting all this time. I just wanted to feel alive again." As she whispered, I felt this horrific pull, like my energy, my life was being drained. I dropped to my knees, gasping for air. I forced myself to look away and managed to roll to the side, out of her grip. In a blind panic, I scrambled up and ran down the stairs, nearly tripping on each step. I burst through the front door, sprinting until I reached the street. I didn't stop running until I was a few blocks away. My phone was still in that cursed house, but I couldn't bring myself to go back. I went home, locked the door, and spent the night sitting in my room, trying to make sense of what had happened. The next morning, I tried to search for her profile, but it was gone, like she had never existed. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was some kind of hallucination or nightmare, but then I started receiving messages. They'd appear on my phone at odd times, always from an unknown number. The messages were short, cryptic, like miss you or come back. Sometimes it would be a photo attached, a picture of me taken from my own window, or one of her old blurry profile pictures, now even more distorted, her face warped into something unrecognizable. One night, after weeks of this torment, I got a message that chilled me to the bone. It was a video. Shaky and distorted, the camera slowly panned around a dark room. I recognized it immediately. It was my living room. The camera was moving toward my bedroom door. In a panic, I looked up, and that's when I felt the cold air behind me, chilling every part of my body. I turned slowly, heart pounding, and there she was, standing at the foot of my bed, eyes locked onto mine, that empty, soulless smile stretching across her face. That's when she whispered, just inches from my ear, "You're mine now." The screen went black, but the feeling of her presence, of that endless, hollow gaze, never left. I've stopped using dating apps altogether, but it doesn't matter. She still finds ways to reach me, and every night, just as I start to drift off, I hear her voice, whispering, waiting. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up. Every message feels like it's pulling me closer to her world, to whatever dark place she came from. And deep down, I know that soon I won't be able to resist. Story the end.
Story number 2.
I never saw myself as the kind of person who'd use a dating app, but loneliness got the better of me. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just a distraction. So on a random Tuesday night, I downloaded one of those popular dating apps, swiping through endless profiles until someone stopped me in my tracks. Her name was Emma. She was beautiful, but in a way that felt unsettling, like she didn't quite belong in our world. Her profile was bare, with only a few photos and a single line in her bio, "Here to make a connection." Her smile was haunting, with eyes that seemed to look right through the screen. Against my better judgment, I swiped right, half expecting no response. To my surprise, she matched with me instantly. Her first message popped up almost immediately. "Hi there. I've been waiting for you." It was strange, but I figured she was trying to be flirty. I replied, "Hi, nice to meet you too." The conversation started easily enough, though her replies were always peculiar. She never asked about my interests or my job, but instead kept asking about where I was, where I'd been, and if I ever felt like someone was watching me. I thought it was a joke, something to keep the mystery alive. But every response left a chill down my spine, as though she were peeling back layers I didn't know I had. Finally, I suggested we meet in person, half expecting her to dodge the question. But to my surprise, she agreed. "Let's meet somewhere quiet, where we can really talk," she messaged. Then she sent me an address, an old rundown diner at the edge of town that I didn't even know was still open. I thought about bailing, but curiosity got the better of me. By the time I got to the diner, it was around midnight. The place was practically deserted, save for an older man behind the counter who barely looked up when I entered. I scanned the empty booths, but Emma wasn't there. I messaged her, but no reply. As I sat down, I started to feel stupid. Maybe this was some elaborate prank. But just as I was about to leave, a figure slid into the booth across from me. It was Emma, or at least it looked like her. She was even more stunning in person, but her eyes, they were so dark, almost black, and her skin had this strange, waxy texture. She didn't look like she belonged in this world. I forced a smile, though my heart was pounding. "Emma?" I asked, barely able to get the word out. She tilted her head, staring at me as though she were trying to read my thoughts. "You don't remember, do you?" she whispered. The question caught me off guard. "Remember what?" Her gaze was piercing, unsettling. "We've met before, many times." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've been with you all along." My mind raced. This had to be some kind of joke, a sick game, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was telling the truth. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down. It was a notification from the app, but it was strange. It said I had a new match with Emma. Confused, I looked back up, but she was gone. Just like that, she had vanished, leaving no trace. The man at the counter was staring at me, his expression grim. No one was sitting there. "Din," he muttered, shaking his head. "You kids, always seeing things that ain't there." I stumbled out of the diner, trying to make sense of what had happened. I opened the app again, and there it was. Emma's profile. But her bio had changed. Now it read, "You can't run from me." My heart raced as I closed the app, feeling like a shadow was lurking just behind me. At home, I tried to shake off the encounter, chalking it up to exhaustion, maybe even a prank. But when I closed my eyes that night, I felt her presence in my room, like she was standing in the corner, watching me. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, just my mind playing tricks on me. But then my phone buzzed again, and a message appeared from her, without me even reopening the app. Let's play a game. If you can figure out who I am, I'll leave you alone. I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming, each one chillingly precise. You left your window unlocked? Gagged. Tin. I liked the shirt you wore yesterday. I'm always with you. The text described details no one could have known, places I'd been, things I'd done when I thought I was completely alone. One night, the messages stopped altogether. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread, unsure if she'd finally moved on or if she was just biding her time. But then something even stranger happened. I started seeing her in the reflection of every window, every mirror. Just behind me, a figure that looked like Emma, her dark eyes locked onto mine, that ghostly smile haunting my every step. Then one evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I looked in the mirror, and there she was, standing just behind me. But this time, she didn't disappear. She leaned closer, her breath icy against my neck, and whispered, "Do you remember me now?" Panic surged through me, and I turned around, but she was gone. I stumbled back, heart racing, trying to catch my breath. That's when I realized something horrifying. My own reflection was staring back at me with her smile. It wasn't my face, but hers, grinning back, mocking me. I shut my eyes, hoping it would all go away, but when I opened them, I was still staring at that horrible, twisted smile. Now, I can't look into mirrors. I cover every single one, but it doesn't matter. I still see her, just out of the corner of my eye, every time I'm alone. I know she's watching, waiting. And every so often, my phone buzzes and there's another message from her. The last one simply read, "We're together now, forever." I don't know who she was or what she wanted, but I know this. She found me. And somehow I think I'll never escape her, because no matter how fast I run, she's always there, a dark shadow over my shoulder. And if you're on a dating app right now, be careful who you match with. You might just find someone or something who doesn't let go. Story the end.
Story number 3.
It was late at night when I matched with Sophie. I'd been swiping mindlessly for over an hour, bored out of my mind, when her profile caught my attention. She was beautiful, but in a peculiar, old-fashioned way, like she'd stepped out of a photo from another era. Her profile was minimal, just a single picture of her standing in a misty forest, her pale face peeking out from the shadows, and a bio that read, "Looking for someone to see the real me." Her profile felt oddly compelling, so I messaged her. "Hey, Sophie. Cool pic. Where was it taken?" I got an instant reply. "Thank you. It's just outside my home. I'd love to show you sometime." I was intrigued. Most people don't want to reveal too much at first, but she seemed open, eager to connect. We started chatting, and soon she was sending me more pictures, each one in strange, shadowy places like old stairwells, abandoned houses, and foggy graveyards. Her style was different, but I brushed it off as artsy. Our conversations grew intense quickly, almost like she knew things about me before I even told her. After a few days of chatting nonstop, Sophie suggested we meet up. She sent me an address, a location I'd never been to on the outskirts of town. It felt sudden, but her messages had a strange pull that I couldn't resist. That night, I drove out, my stomach twisting as I followed my GPS deeper into the countryside. Finally, I arrived at the spot, an ancient-looking house, half hidden behind gnarled trees and choked with vines. The place seemed abandoned, the paint peeling and the windows dark, but I double-checked my phone. This was the address Sophie had given me. "Come in," read a new message from her. Heart pounding, I pushed open the front door, which creaked as if it hadn't moved in years. The air inside was heavy, cold, and smelled faintly of mildew. I called out, "Sophie," but my voice was swallowed by the silence. I was about to leave when I noticed something eerie. Photos on the walls. Dozens of them. My skin crawled as I took a closer look. They were all pictures of people, some smiling, others expressionless, but all were in various stages of age and decay, as if some were ancient and others only a few years old. My heart raced as I realized that every single one of these faces was a man. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the silence. I checked the message. It was from Sophie. "You made it. Aren't the photos beautiful?" I froze, dread tightening in my chest. "Who are these people, Sophie?" I texted back, desperate for an answer that made sense. She replied, "They're my friends. They're here with me." A chill ran down my spine. Something was horribly wrong, but against every ounce of logic, I moved deeper into the house. I felt drawn to it, like there was some force urging me forward, pulling me into the darkness. I climbed the creaking staircase, led by some invisible thread, until I reached a small room at the end of the hall. I opened the door and saw Sophie standing in the middle of the room, her face half covered by her hair. But there was something off about her appearance, something that sent a wave of nausea through me. Her skin seemed too pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were black, like bottomless pits. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice hollow and echoing. "I've been waiting for you a long, long time." The air grew colder, and I felt this overwhelming pressure weighing me down. I stumbled backward, but the door slammed shut, trapping me in the room with her. What do you want from me?" I stammered, my voice trembling. She tilted her head, and that haunting, empty smile spread across her face. "I need you to stay with me," she murmured, stepping closer. "You see, I was once like you. I lived here, loved here, but they wouldn't let me leave." I backed up until I felt the wall against my back. "Who are they?" "The ones you saw in the photos. Each one is here, still trapped, bound to this place, bound to me." Her voice grew softer, almost sad, and I felt an icy grip tightening around my heart. It's been so long since I've had someone new. I fumbled with my phone, desperate to call for help, but when I looked at the screen, the time and date were gone, replaced with a single, haunting message. "Stay." I dropped the phone, heart pounding in sheer terror. "I can't stay here, Sophie," I gasped, searching the room for any way out, almost sympathetically. "They all say that at first, but don't worry. Soon, you won't want to leave. Soon, you'll be part of this house, just like they are." Suddenly, the walls around me seemed to come alive, shadows shifting and twisting. Faces emerged, dozens of them, all staring at me with hollow, lifeless eyes. They began whispering, voices overlapping in a haunting, desperate plea, but I couldn't make out the words. Sophie's cold hand reached out, resting on my arm, and I felt a strange numbness spreading through my body. I mustered every ounce of strength I had, breaking free from her grip and dashing toward the door. I threw it open, racing down the stairs as her voice echoed behind me. "You can't escape, not forever." Bursting out of the house, I sprinted to my car, throwing myself inside and speeding away without looking back. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my ears. I drove until I reached the main road, then pulled over to catch my breath. I tried to erase her profile when I got home, but it was gone, as if it had never existed. All my messages with her had disappeared too, leaving no trace that we'd ever spoken. And yet I still felt her presence, like a shadow creeping just behind me. Since that night, I've seen her in every reflective surface, windows, mirrors, even puddles on rainy days. She's always there, watching, waiting, and every so often I'll get a new message on my phone from an unknown number. It's always the same words: "You can't escape forever." I've tried deleting my account, changing my number, but nothing works. She's always there, haunting me, reminding me that someday I'll be going back to that house. And I have a feeling when I do, I won't be coming out. Story the end.
Story number 4.
It all started as a joke. My friends had convinced me to sign up for an online dating app, teasing me about being the last single guy in the group. I'd never taken online dating seriously, but I figured it was harmless fun. I swiped through the usual lineup of profiles, mostly ignoring them, until one night, a profile appeared that made me stop cold. Her name was Clara. Her profile picture showed a woman with dark hair standing under a flickering streetlight, her eyes almost glowing in the dim light. Her bio was strange. Just a single line that read, "Looking for someone who sees the real me." I laughed at it, thinking she was trying to be deep or mysterious. But something about her eyes, something hollow and desperate, sent a shiver down my spine. Against my better judgment, I swiped right. We matched instantly, which felt odd since that rarely happened. I opened the chat, typing out a generic message, but before I could even hit send, she sent me a message. "I knew you'd find me." I stared at the screen, unsure how to reply. "Well, here I am," I typed back, trying to keep it lighthearted. Her response came in seconds. "Finally." There was something almost relieved in her words, but also a little unsettling. We exchanged a few more messages, but she never answered my questions directly. When I asked about her job, she said, "I don't work anymore." When I asked about her hobbies, she said, "I don't really need hobbies anymore." Every answer left me more confused and creeped out. After a couple of days, she asked to meet up. She sent me a location, an abandoned park at the edge of town. It wasn't exactly a typical first date spot. I told myself it was a bad idea, but my curiosity got the better of me. I'd always been drawn to things that felt off limits, and something about her made me feel like she held some kind of secret. I drove to the park that night, finding it desolate and eerie. The streetlights barely worked, casting long shadows over the cracked paths and broken benches. I checked my phone. No new messages from Clara. My heart pounded as I wandered through the dark, searching for any sign of her. After a few minutes, I saw her. She was standing at the edge of a dried-up fountain, her back to me, her long dark hair hanging down like a curtain. I called her name and she turned slowly. Her face was familiar from her profile picture, but somehow wrong. She looked almost faded, like an old photograph. Her eyes were lifeless, empty, and fixed directly on mine. "Clara?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. She didn't respond. Instead, she raised her hand and pointed to the ground near my feet. Confused, I looked down. At the edge of the fountain was a dusty, crumpled newspaper. The headline caught my eye: "Local woman found dead at Edgewood Park." My stomach lurched as I read the small black and white photo, a grainy image of a woman lying in the park, her lifeless eyes staring out. It was Clara. I looked up in horror, but she was gone. The park was empty, silent as if she'd never been there at all. Heart pounding, I backed away, nearly tripping over my own feet as I fled back to my car. I didn't look back until I was safely inside, locking the doors with shaking hands. I thought I could forget about it, tell myself it was a weird, morbid prank or that my mind had somehow played tricks on me. But when I got home, I checked the app, just out of morbid curiosity, only to find that Clara's profile was gone. It was as if she'd never existed. I tried to delete my account, but every time I did, the app would crash, keeping her memory alive in my mind like an open wound. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it, my stomach twisting as I read the words, "You can't leave me. I need you to keep looking." The messages became a nightly ritual. Every night at precisely 3 a.m., my phone would buzz with a message from her. Each one was cryptic, almost pleading, "I'm waiting," or "Don't forget me." I tried blocking the number, but she'd just appear from another one, always at 3:03. It was like she was haunting my phone, attached to me, refusing to let go. One night, I was watching TV when the power flickered and went out. My phone buzzed. It was Clara again, but this time with a photo attachment. Against my better judgment, I opened it. My blood went cold as I saw the image. It was a picture of me, sitting on my couch, staring at my phone. But it wasn't taken from inside my house. It was taken from outside my window. Panicked, I checked the locks and looked outside, but there was no one there. I stayed up all night, clutching my phone in one hand, a baseball bat in the other. But she didn't message again that night, not until 3:03 a.m. the next night. The message read, "You looked scared. Are you afraid?" The messages didn't stop. Each one was more personal, more intrusive. She seemed to know things about me, details I'd never told anyone. She knew where I'd gone to school, where I worked, even which nights I'd stayed late at the office. It was as if she were stalking my every move, even though I never saw a trace of her. Then, one night, I fell asleep, too exhausted to stay up waiting for her message. But at exactly 3:03 a.m., my phone buzzed, waking me. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a video call. My hand shook as I picked up the phone, staring at the screen. I shouldn't have answered, but my finger tapped accept on its own, almost like I was under some horrible spell. The screen flickered, and then there she was. Clara, sitting alone in that dark park, her eyes trained on me, her mouth twisted into a sad, broken smile. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered, her voice crackling through the static. I couldn't speak, my mouth dry, heart racing. She leaned closer to the screen, her face filling my phone, her eyes black and bottomless. "You'll never leave me," she said, her voice echoing as the screen went black. Since that night, I haven't slept properly. I moved to a new place, threw out my phone, and swore I'd never go near another dating app again. But no matter what I do, every night at 3:03 a.m., my phone buzzes. Even if I leave it off, even if I get a new number, the messages come, like she's calling out to me from some dark, twisted place I can't escape. So if you ever get a match with a girl named Clara, one with dark, haunted eyes and a sad smile, swipe left, because once she finds you, she'll never let go. Story the end.
Story number 5.
It started out like any other evening. I was sprawled on my couch, scrolling through my phone, my friends incessantly urging me to find someone online. "It'll be fun," they said. "Just give it a shot." Reluctantly, I downloaded a dating app, half-heartedly creating a profile with a couple of mediocre photos and a generic bio. After a few mindless swipes, I stumbled across her profile. Her name was Lily. The photos were striking. She had an enchanting smile, and her eyes sparkled like the stars. But there was something about the profile that sent a chill down my spine. The bio was brief, a single line, ready to meet my soulmate. Despite the eeriness, I felt compelled to swipe right. Within moments, we matched. A message popped up from her, "I've been waiting for you." I laughed it off, thinking it was just a cheesy pickup line. I replied with a simple, "Hey." Our conversation flowed smoothly at first. She seemed funny and engaging, often sending me cute memes and photos of herself in different outfits. But as the days went by, the tone shifted. She began asking increasingly strange questions. "Do you believe in fate? What do you fear the most? Have you ever felt someone watching you?" I shrugged it off as quirky, but when she started texting late at night, asking if I could feel her presence, I began to feel uneasy. Still, I found myself drawn to her. There was a magnetic pull that I couldn't resist. After a week of chatting, she suggested we meet in person. I hesitated, but eventually agreed, intrigued and a little nervous. "Let's meet at the old library," she suggested, which felt bizarre considering the library was rumored to be haunted. I told myself it was just a date and I should go for it. The evening arrived and I walked into the dimly lit library, the smell of old books hanging in the air. My heart raced as I scanned the room. The place was almost empty. The only sound, the soft rustling of pages and the occasional creak of the floorboards. As I searched for Lily, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, like I was being watched. "Hey there." A soft voice broke the silence, and I turned to see her standing behind me, her smile radiant yet unsettling. "I'm so glad you came." We chatted for a while, but the conversation felt odd, as though she were probing me for information. "Do you believe in life after death?" she asked, her eyes locking onto mine. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I guess I never thought about it," I said carefully. She leaned closer, her expression shifting slightly. "You should. Some souls never leave. They linger." A shiver ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. But she just smiled, as if my discomfort delighted her. The date continued, but I found it hard to focus. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I glanced at the clock and realized it was much later than I had thought. "I should get going," I said, trying to sound casual. "Not yet," she insisted, reaching out to take my hand. "I want to show you something first." Before I could protest, she pulled me toward the back of the library, where the aisles of books loomed like dark shadows. We stopped at a secluded corner where the light barely reached. "Here," she said, producing a dusty book from a hidden shelf. The title read, "The Cursed Souls of Ravenswood." "What's this?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and fear creeping in. Lily opened the book, flipping through the pages until she landed on a chapter titled, "The Lost Souls." "These are the stories of people who never found their true love," she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're trapped here, waiting, just like me." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" But before I could protest further, she leaned in and whispered, "You're just like them. You don't know it yet, but you're one of us." The air grew heavy, and I could see her eyes shifting, darkening, as if something sinister lurked beneath her surface. Panic surged within me, and I pulled my hand away. "I need to go," I said, turning to leave. But she gripped my wrist tightly, her expression shifting from playful to something more menacing. "You can't leave. You have to stay with me." With a surge of adrenaline, I yanked my arm free and bolted for the exit. I could hear her footsteps echoing behind me, chasing me down the aisles. I rushed outside into the night, my heart racing as I fumbled for my keys. Once I was safely inside my car, I locked the doors and took a deep breath. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her standing there, but the street was empty. I drove home, my mind reeling from the night's events, unable to comprehend what had just happened. When I got home, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I decided to delete the app, hoping that cutting ties with her would sever whatever strange connection we had formed. But as I tried to log in, a message popped up. "You can't escape me." I stared at the screen, feeling cold fear creeping into my bones. I uninstalled the app, desperate to move on, but the very next day, I received a text from an unknown number. It read, "I'm waiting for you, just like always." Panic gripped me. I changed my number, thinking it would help. I started avoiding the library and any places she might haunt. But with every passing day, the messages continued to come, each one more haunting than the last. "You're mine. You'll never be free, and I'll find you." Weeks went by, and I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, until one night I woke up to a soft knock on my window. Heart racing, I looked outside to see Lily standing there, her smile wide, but her eyes dark and hollow. "I told you I'd find you," she said, her voice a chilling whisper. I couldn't breathe as I stumbled backward, scrambling to grab my phone. but the screen flickered, showing her face instead of my contacts. "You're never getting rid of me," she said, the shadows around her darkening. I ran to the door, but it swung open before I could reach it. She was standing there, blocking my escape, her presence suffocating. "Stay with me forever," she pleaded. And in that moment, I knew the truth. She was more than just a girl from an app. The stories in that cursed book weren't just tales, they were warnings. I had unwittingly invited her into my life, and now I was trapped. I don't know what will happen next, but as I write this, I can hear her voice echoing in my mind. If you ever come across a profile of a girl named Lily with an enchanting smile and dark eyes, I urge you, swipe left. You may think it's just a simple game, but trust me, once you match with her, there's no escaping the curse that follows. Story the end.
Story number 6.
But then I never believed an app could haunt you either. It all started when I downloaded SoulSeek, a new dating app that everyone at work had been raving about. The app claimed to find your perfect match using advanced algorithms that analyzed everything, your interests, your likes, your darkest fears. A bit much, I thought, but I was curious. After I set up my profile, I started swiping. Most profiles looked normal enough, and the app even had this eerie sound effect when you matched with someone, like a soft, echoing chime. A few conversations came and went, but nothing really clicked. Then, just as I was about to give up for the night, I got a match. Her name was Emma. She had a simple profile picture, just a girl with shoulder-length hair and a shy smile, looking directly at the camera. Her bio was strange, though. It read, "I'm waiting for you. Please don't leave me alone." I almost swiped left. It was odd, a little desperate maybe, but something made me hesitate. I swiped right, and immediately a message popped up. "I've been waiting so long for someone like you." That should have been my first clue that something was off. It was late, and I assumed it was just her being enthusiastic. We started talking, and Emma seemed lonely. She told me she was new to town, that she didn't know many people. She said she'd been through a rough time and was just looking for someone to see her for who she really was. After a few minutes of chatting, I asked her out for coffee, but Emma was resistant. She told me that she wasn't ready to meet in person, that she wasn't allowed to leave. I laughed it off, joking that it sounded like something out of a horror movie. She didn't laugh back. The next night, Emma messaged me again, and this time, her tone was different. "Please, don't leave me alone tonight." I typed a quick reply. "I won't, promise." But before I could send it, another message appeared. "Emma, promise you'll stay, even if things get strange." This time, a cold chill crept over me. It didn't make sense, but something about her words felt real. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just a quirky girl who was maybe a little too intense. Still, I promised her I wouldn't ghost her, and we kept chatting. The third night, I was about to go to sleep when my phone buzzed again. I opened the app and found another message from Emma. "Come find me." I felt my stomach turn. I typed back, "Where are you? Look out your window." I got up, laughing nervously to myself. This was obviously a prank, one of my friends trying to freak me out. But when I looked outside, no one was there. Just the empty street, silent and dark. A new message came through. "I see you. Why don't you see me?" I froze. I hadn't mentioned that I'd looked out the window, hadn't typed a single word to her about it. My heart started pounding, and I set my phone down, determined to ignore her. But it didn't stop. All night, my phone buzzed with messages from Emma, each one stranger than the last. "Don't turn your back on me. I'm closer than you think. Please, just look." By the next morning, I was exhausted, my nerves frayed. I deleted the app and blocked the number, trying to convince myself that it was a bot or someone playing an elaborate prank. But that night, my phone buzzed again. It was a message notification, only it wasn't from any app I recognized. It just appeared on my screen with no option to block, no name attached. You can't delete me that easily. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I checked my phone, but there was no app, no account, no trace of SoulSeek anywhere on my device. But the messages kept coming, each one a little more unsettling, each one a little closer to me. Finally, in desperation, I messaged back. "Me. Who are you? What do you want?" The reply was instant. "I'm your perfect match. Forever." I threw my phone down, my mind racing. I had to get rid of this thing, whatever it was. I took my phone to the electronics store the next day and told them it was broken, hoping a reset would fix it. The clerk gave me a strange look, but agreed to wipe it clean. I felt a huge relief wash over me as I left the store with my newly reset phone, convinced it was over. That night, I settled into bed, feeling like I could finally relax. But as I drifted off, my phone buzzed. Heart pounding, I picked it up. There, on the screen, was one last message from Emma. Did you really think you could leave me? Panicked, I turned my phone off and set it down, staring at the ceiling in the dark. That's when I felt it, a weight on the edge of my bed, like someone had just sat down beside me. My phone lit up one more time, the screen casting a faint glow across the room. Slowly, I turned to look, terrified of what I might see. And there she was, sitting in the shadows at the end of my bed, her pale face lit by the glow of my screen. Her eyes fixed on me, her lips twisted into a sad, pleading smile. I told you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I just wanted someone to see me. The light on my phone went out, leaving me alone in the darkness, and now every night, no matter what I do, she's there, sitting at the edge of my bed, watching. Story the end.
Story number 7.
I'll admit, I wasn't looking for anything serious when I downloaded Love Wired. I figured I'd get a few matches, maybe chat with some people, and move on. But when I matched with Maddie, things felt different. Her profile picture was simple, a close-up of her laughing, with dark curls framing her face and bright eyes that seemed to stare right through the screen. Her bio was short and sweet, just looking for someone who can see me. After a few quick messages, she told me she'd recently moved to town and was feeling a little lost, hoping to make some new connections. We talked about everything from our favorite music to our hidden fears, and by the end of the night, I felt like I knew her. She had this eerie way of making me feel completely understood, like she could read between the lines of every word I typed. The next night, Maddie messaged me with a bold request. Want to come over? I'd love some company. She sent me an address and signed off with a simple, can't wait to meet you. It was late, but something about her invitation felt urgent, like she really needed someone there. I didn't even hesitate. I threw on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and headed out. Her address led me to an old apartment building on the edge of town, one I'd never noticed before. It was tall, with dark windows and a foreboding atmosphere that made my skin crawl. As I entered the building, I felt like I was stepping into another world. The hallway was dimly lit, with faded wallpaper peeling off the walls and an unsettling silence that hung thick in the air. I followed her directions up the stairs to the 5th floor. The door to her apartment, 5B, was cracked open. I knocked, but there was no answer. Cautiously, I stepped inside, calling her name. Maddie? The apartment was eerily quiet, sparsely furnished, and cold. A chill settled over me as I noticed something odd. There was no clutter, no dishes, no signs of life, just empty rooms and bare walls. My phone buzzed. I'm in the bedroom, end of the hall. The message felt strange, like it had come out of nowhere, but I pushed my unease aside and headed down the hallway, each step echoing in the stillness. I reached the last door and opened it, finding a dark, empty bedroom. Only a small lamp glowed dimly in the corner, casting long shadows across the walls. I looked around, feeling a creeping dread settle over me. There was no one here. I pulled out my phone, ready to message her, when a new notification appeared. Maddie, do you see me now? As I stared at the message, my phone buzzed again, this time with a photo. My heart nearly stopped. It was a picture of me, standing alone in the empty bedroom, taken from somewhere behind me. Panicking, I spun around, but there was no one else in the room. Just silence and shadows. My phone buzzed again. Please, don't go. I've been alone for so long. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled back toward the door, but before I could reach it, I felt a cold, invisible hand on my shoulder. It was as if icy fingers were digging into my skin, holding me in place. My phone buzzed one last time. Stay with me. Forever. I broke free and ran out of the apartment, my heart racing as I sprinted down the stairs and into the street. Once I was outside, I looked back, expecting to see her standing in the window, watching me. But there was nothing. The building was dark, silent, and lifeless. I made it home, locked my doors, and deleted the app, vowing to never touch it again. But that wasn't the end. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone from Love Wired. I opened it, dreading what I might see. My screen displayed a single new message. Maddie, you can't delete me that easily. I felt a chill run down my spine. I searched for her profile, but it was gone. Confused and terrified, I deleted my account and tried to forget about her. But the messages kept coming. Every night at exactly 3:33 a.m., a new message from an untraceable profile. Maddie, I'm still here. I see you. The messages would sometimes include photos of me, taken from impossible angles, sitting alone in my room, lying in bed, even walking to work. I checked every inch of my apartment for cameras, for anything that could explain it, but I found nothing. Desperate, I threw out my phone and got a new one. For a few nights, there was blessed silence. But then last night I heard a faint buzz. My new phone on my nightstand lighting up with a message notification. You can't get rid of me. Now every night she sends me another message. Photos. Please to see her. I don't answer, but she keeps watching, lurking in the dark corners of my life. I've tried everything to stop it, but she's always there, waiting. Sometimes I hear a faint whisper in the dead of night, just outside my bedroom door. Stay with me, forever. Story the end.
Story number 8.
After a long, dry spell, I finally decided to download another dating app. Haunt was the latest trend. It promised deeper connections, not just surface-level matches. I'd rolled my eyes when I first saw the ads, but my friends kept urging me to try it. And honestly, I was lonely enough to give anything a shot. I signed up late on a Saturday night, filling out the usual questions about hobbies and favorite movies. After that, I was swiping through profiles, almost numb to the process, when I saw him, Lucas. His profile picture showed him standing on a beach, his dark hair windblown, looking out over the ocean with this intense, almost haunting gaze. Something about him was captivating, and the way his bio was written, looking for someone who's not afraid of the dark, had me hooked. I swiped right, and to my surprise, we matched instantly. Before I even had a chance to start a conversation, he messaged me. Hi, I thought you'd never find me. I laughed a little. It was a bit forward, but there was something charming about it. We started chatting, and immediately I felt a connection unlike anything I'd felt before. Lucas seemed to understand me, like he could see right through every superficial thing and dive straight into my mind. He told me he was new to the area, staying at an old house he inherited on the outskirts of town, where he'd come to get away from everything. The next night we were chatting again. I was starting to feel like I really knew him. After a couple of hours of back and forth, he suggested we meet up. Come over, he wrote, attaching an address. I'd love to show you my place. I didn't even think to look up the address. It felt right, like I'd been waiting for this invitation. So, the next evening, I got in my car and followed the directions he'd sent. As I drove farther from the city center, the neighborhoods became less familiar, with older homes and wider spaces between them. Finally, I turned onto a winding road that led to a tall, dark house set back in the trees. The house was massive, like something from a Gothic novel. The paint was faded, and the shutters hung crooked. A strange fog clung to the yard, even though it was clear everywhere else. When I reached the door, I hesitated. Something felt off. But before I could talk myself out of it, my phone buzzed. Come in. I'm in the library, waiting. His message drew me in, and I pushed open the heavy wooden door, stepping inside. The interior was exactly as I'd imagined, dimly lit with old wood paneling and the faint smell of dust and age. I glanced around, expecting to see him coming down the stairs or stepping out from a doorway, but the house was silent. Lucas? I called, my voice echoing through the stillness. No answer. I wandered deeper into the house, looking for any sign of him, but the place felt deserted. That's when I found the library. Rows of old books lined the shelves, and in the center was a large armchair facing the fireplace. Someone was sitting in it. I could only see the back of the chair and the top of a dark head. Relieved, I walked closer. Lucas? But as I rounded the chair, my stomach dropped. The chair was empty. My phone buzzed again, and I looked down, expecting another message from Lucas. Instead, I found a photo. It was of me, standing right there in the library, looking at the empty chair. I could feel my blood run cold. Lucas, glad you made it. Don't leave. Panic gripped me, and I turned to bolt out of the room, but as I did, I heard footsteps on the floor above me, slow and steady. I could feel someone, watching me. Another photo appeared on my phone, this time showing me standing in the doorway to the library, looking terrified. My heart pounded as I ran for the front door, but just as I reached for the handle, I got another message. Why leave so soon? We're just getting started. I yanked open the door, sprinting to my car without looking back. I sped away, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. By the time I reached my apartment, I was convinced it had all been some kind of elaborate prank, a bad dream. But when I checked my phone, I found new messages from Lucas. I'm here with you. Can you see me? I blocked him, deleted the app, and tried to put it out of my mind. But that night, I woke to the sound of a soft tapping. I reached for my phone, and there it was, another message from him. I'm closer than you think. I threw my phone across the room, my heart racing. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the days that followed, I kept seeing him in my notifications. Even though I'd blocked him, his messages still appeared, no matter what I did. Then one night, I heard the soft creak of a door opening in my apartment. I froze, clutching my phone, staring at the screen as a final message came through. I told you we'd meet, and now I'll never leave. My phone screen went black, and then a cold hand touched my shoulder.
Story number 9.
It was just a typical Friday night, sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling through endless profiles on a dating app. I'd had some luck in the past, but nothing lasting. Most people never seem to be quite what they appeared to be, but loneliness has a way of making you overlook that. I was about to close the app when I came across her profile. Her name was Elise. She had a natural beauty, not overly posed like the rest. Her smile was gentle, almost sad, and her bio read, "Looking for someone who wants something real." It felt different somehow. I swiped right, and within seconds, we matched. It was late, but I figured there was no harm in messaging her right away. "Hey, Elise, you're up late too?" To my surprise, she responded immediately. "I've been waiting for someone like you." Strange, but I played along. We talked for hours, and she had this way of getting me to open up. I found myself confessing things I'd never told anyone. She listened intently, responding with messages that felt like she really understood. Eventually, I asked her out for coffee. That's when she said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Meet me at the house on Willow Street." I blinked at my screen. Willow Street was in my neighborhood, but there weren't any cafes there, only a few abandoned houses that no one dared to enter. I hesitated, typing out a response. "You mean one of the old houses? They've been empty for years, right?" A few seconds passed, then a new message appeared. "It's not empty. I promise. Come find me." Part of me wanted to ask more, but something pulled me in, as if I had no choice but to go. I put on a jacket and headed out into the chilly night. My heart raced with each step toward Willow Street. As I approached, I could see the silhouette of a lone house under the faint glow of the streetlights. It was run down, its windows cracked, the garden overgrown, yet I felt drawn to it, compelled to go inside. I reached the door, and to my surprise, it was slightly ajar. The air was cold and heavy as I stepped inside. The faint smell of decay hung in the air, and the house felt disturbingly silent. I pulled out my phone and messaged Elise. "Me. I'm here. Where are you?" No response. I looked around, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. Dust floated through the air, illuminated by the faint light from my phone. I ventured farther into the house, feeling an eerie presence around me. Just as I was about to turn back, my phone buzzed. "I'm waiting in the room at the end of the hall." My hands shook as I followed the message's instructions, moving toward the end of the dark hallway. As I neared the door, I felt an intense, icy chill. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I slowly pushed the door open. The room was dark, but in the corner, I could see a figure, a woman sitting with her back to me. Her hair was long and dark, draped over her shoulders, just like Elise's profile picture. "Elise," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She didn't turn. She just sat there, motionless, as if frozen in time. I took a hesitant step forward, reaching out with my hand, but as I did, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, my heart stopping at what I saw. "I'm behind you." The room was suddenly filled with a bone-chilling silence. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw nothing. Just shadows flickering in the dimness. My phone buzzed again, a new message. "I'm not in front of you or behind you, I'm in the walls." A paralyzing fear gripped me, and I froze, listening as faint whispers began to echo from every corner of the room. Soft, desperate cries filling the walls. My phone buzzed one last time. "Help me! Let me out!" I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. I could feel her presence, pressing in from every direction, suffocating me. Just as I turned to bolt, I felt a cold, invisible hand grip my wrist, pulling me toward the walls. Desperately, I broke free and ran out of the house, stumbling onto the sidewalk and gasping for air. I didn't stop running until I was home, slamming the door behind me, my heart pounding. Once I felt safe, I looked down at my phone, still clutched in my trembling hand. I opened the app, planning to delete my profile and get rid of it forever. But when I went to my messages, Elise's profile was gone. Not just the messages. Her entire profile had vanished, as if she'd never existed. Shaking, I went online to search for any news about the house on Willow Street. I found an old article from years ago. "Young woman found dead in abandoned house on Willow Street, presumed missing, but never found." The woman's name was Elise. The article included a photo of her, the same sad smile as in her profile picture. My phone buzzed one last time and I nearly dropped it. I glanced at the screen and a message popped up in my inbox from a profile with no name, no picture. Just one final message, still waiting for someone real. Terrified, I deleted the app and blocked the number, but every night since, I still hear my phone buzz at 3:15 a.m., the exact time Elise went missing, the time she was last seen alive. I never check it, but the messages keep coming, reminders from someone who will never truly leave. Story the end.
Story number 10.
I had been single for a long time, so I thought, why not give online dating a shot? Everyone was doing it, and if they could find love through a screen, why couldn't I? I downloaded the app and set up my profile, scrolling through endless faces. Most profiles blurred together, but then I saw her. Her name was Anna. Her profile picture was simple but striking. Dark hair, piercing green eyes, and a small, mysterious smile. Her bio was vague but intriguing, looking for someone who can see me for who I really am. It was just enough to grab my attention, and without a second thought, I swiped right. A match. My heart skipped a beat. Within seconds, a message from Anna popped up. Anna? Hi. You look interesting. I couldn't help but grin. We started chatting, and it was as if she knew exactly what to say to keep me hooked. We talked about books, movies, fears, and dreams. Anna was funny, witty, and seemed to share my darkest, most hidden thoughts. Hours melted away as we messaged back and forth. Finally, I worked up the courage to ask her out for a coffee. She replied almost immediately. And I'd love that. Meet me at St. James Cafe. It's quiet and we can actually hear each other. The name St. James Cafe struck a chord, though I couldn't remember why. I searched it online and found it was an old, abandoned place in the heart of downtown. The reviews all said it was closed down after some tragedy years ago. Yet Anna was insistent. When I mentioned it was closed, she simply responded, Anna, trust me, I know a way in. It was strange, but something about Anna made it impossible to say no. The next evening, I arrived at the abandoned cafe. Its windows were dark, covered in grime, and the whole building seemed to lean with age. A cold gust of wind swept through the empty street as I walked up to the door, feeling a strange weight in the air. Just as I was about to turn around and leave, I heard my phone ping. Anna, don't be scared. I'm waiting for you inside. With a nervous chuckle, I tried the door. To my surprise, it creaked open, revealing a dark, empty space inside. Shadows played along the walls and an icy chill hung in the air. I took a step in, calling her name softly. Anna? There was no response. The place smelled of dust and mold, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then I saw her, sitting at a table at the far end of the room. She waved me over with that same small, mysterious smile from her profile picture. As I approached, something felt off. Her eyes seemed darker, almost hollow, and her skin had an unnatural pallor, but I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks in the dim light. I sat down and we began to talk. She was quieter in person, her voice barely above a whisper, but her gaze never wavered. The air grew colder, and an uncomfortable silence settled between us. Breaking the silence, I asked, So how did you find this place? Anna looked at me, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. I used to come here all the time. Before. Before what? I asked, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she began to tell me about her life, or rather her death. It was like she was trying to piece together memories from some distant, painful past. She spoke about loneliness, betrayal, and how she'd been left here, waiting for someone who could see her, truly see her. I laughed nervously, assuming she was messing with me. All right, ghost girl, you almost had me there. Her face didn't change. She just kept staring, and as she did, her form seemed to shift. The edges of her figure blurred, almost fading into the darkness around her. The room grew unbearably cold, and I realized I could see my breath. Suddenly, I couldn't move. My limbs felt like lead, and panic welled up inside me. Anna's voice grew louder, echoing off the empty walls. I've waited so long for someone like you, she whispered, her face inching closer, eyes staring through me. Finally, someone can see me. Anna, this isn't funny. I managed to choke out, though I could barely hear my own voice. But she just leaned in closer, her eyes widening. I can see you, too. Before I could react, she reached out and touched my hand. Her fingers were ice cold, freezing me to the bone. And in that instant, images flooded my mind. I saw her death, a violent, agonizing betrayal that had left her trapped here, waiting for someone, anyone, to find her. Her face was twisted in pain, in desperation. I tried to pull my hand away, but she held it tight, her grip like iron. Stay with me, she whispered, her voice echoing through the empty cafe. We can be together, forever. I felt the life draining out of me, like she was pulling me into some dark void. I struggled, panic rising as my vision began to fade. Somehow, With every bit of strength I had left, I yanked my hand free and stumbled back, gasping for air. Anna's form flickered, her face twisted with anger and sadness. "Don't leave me," she whispered, her voice hollow, reverberating in my ears. I turned and bolted for the door, not looking back. As I ran out, the cafe seemed to close in behind me, the walls shifting and twisting in the dark. I stumbled out into the cold night air, my heart pounding. I didn't stop running until I was several blocks away, where I finally dared to look back. The cafe was gone. Breathing heavily, I looked down at my phone, still clutched in my hand. I pulled up the dating app, scrolling to Anna's profile. But she wasn't there. It was as if she'd never existed, no trace left behind. I deleted the app, swearing I'd never touch it again. That night, I barely slept, haunted by the image of Anna's ghostly face, her whisper echoing in my mind. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it had all been a nightmare, a trick of my imagination. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw faint bruises around my wrist, right where she'd grabbed me. And every now and then, in the dead of night, I hear a ping on my phone, as if someone's trying to reach me. I can't bring myself to check who it is. All I know is I'll never swipe right again. Story the end.